Don't just live for tomorrow, or just live in yesterday. Just be glad for all you have that's in today. And though you've come through many obstacles.
Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my blind reaction to Idiocracy. So this is a donation reward movie reaction, and it is for Venom 0027. Yeah, we actually have a movie reward that's not for Smurf. Though there is more coming from Smurf, but yeah, we actually got someone else donating for a reward. Nothing wrong with the same person donating over and over again, but yeah, it's fun to change things up because different people have different movies they'll request, different kinds of ideas of things to check out, different series even to request. So it's interesting to see what kind of stuff that people are into and want to see me check out as well. So, Idiocracy. So I don't know a lot about this film. I believe, and I might be wrong about this, but I believe this movie is a political satire, and I think Terry Crews is like the president in it or something. It's a movie I've heard of, but when I hear of it mentioned, it's mostly like people are talking about political commentary and satire, and they just bring it up like this is like some Idiocracy level shit and stuff like that. That's the kind of thing they say, and it's like that doesn't actually tell me what the movie is about exactly. But within the context of when people have said that, whether in reports or videos talking about current political situations in the US, I assume it's in reference to like this movie like displaying the political systems as just completely out of control and insane and just so comically, like, what's the word? Incompetent. So comically incompetent that it's obviously to an extreme level that even in real life is a little bit much. But it's obviously, again, it's a satire, it's a parody, it's meant to exaggerate, but also shine a light on what kind of shit is actually happening, but again, to an exaggerated level. But that's all I know about the movie. I don't know who else is in it. I don't know what the actual like main plot is, and I don't even know how accurate my views on this is. Again, I'm going off of very little information, basically what I've just heard people say about it. Even the title, it's obviously like a combination of idiot and democracy, or I guess technically idiocy and democracy. But otherwise that doesn't really tell you much outside of, again, if you know this is a political parody, a political satire, that alone warrants the title. So it doesn't actually give you a lot of information outside of that. Now, regarding politics, I know a lot of people, a lot of reactors, and just content creators in general, unless they are a political channel or whatnot, a lot of content creators tend to avoid that topic, and I've never done so. You guys know that I am very open about sharing my political opinions and viewpoints, that I don't hide that, and I feel strongly about that. I feel strongly about being open and honest. I feel like trying to remain neutral to keep this quote-unquote professional atmosphere on your channel is wrong, honestly. I feel like even no matter what side you're on, you should be standing up for what you believe in. Trying to remain neutral in everything, especially in the face of things that are clear injustices, is, in my opinion, wrong. And I understand that most content creators do this. I understand why, and I'm not going to entirely fault them for it, especially since a lot of them do use YouTube and whatnot for, you know, their actual jobs and need to make money and don't want to get demonetized and shit. So it's like, I understand that. I'm not even going to entirely blame them, but from a personal level, I can't hold back on that. I have to be open and honest about my views on this, especially when something big happens or something just notable is commonplace. So I know that may not be everyone's cup of tea, and most of the time I don't bring it up too heavily. I usually only mention it if like it's in relation to something within the movie or episode or whatever I'm watching or playing or whatever. If it has some kind of actual connection to the content I'm reacting to. Usually that's the only time I bring it up. So I'm saying that here because since this is a political satire, there will probably be at least quite a few moments where I do bring stuff up. And in the afterthoughts, I'll probably talk about more and all. But just to give the most basic explanation in these pre-thoughts, I am left-leaning. Not even really leaning. I'm a leftist. I side more towards democratic socialism. And I am very, very much anti-right. Anti-conservative / Republican, and kind of everything they stand for, pretty much. I won't go further into detail about that, but I will also say that there is a lot about even the Democrats that I don't like. I do not consider myself a Democrat. I consider myself independent, leftist / democratic socialist. That more aligns with my ideologies and beliefs and moral and ethical ideals. I will vote for Democrats much more often than I will vote for a Republican, mostly just because, let's be honest, in America it's a two-party system and they're the only parties that actually will win elections, but still, you get the general gist. Like I said, I'll probably talk about more as we watch the movie, as we go into more with the afterthoughts and all. If that kind of thing isn't for you, I may suggest just not watching this reaction and paying more attention to other stuff on the channel. Because this again, if this is a political satire, which again I'm very strongly believing it is, then that kind of stuff is going to be heavy in topic here. Just like that kind of stuff, I think I talked about this kind of stuff even quite a lot in V for Vendetta in that reaction. So it's like this one is probably going to be more on the nose and direct with that though. But yeah, either way, just giving you a heads up and everything, to let you know that this video will probably be very politically charged. And if it doesn't end up being so, then it just doesn't end up being so. Again, I'm not 100% on the movie, so I don't know how much of what I've heard is correct. But either way, we're going to get into this, hope for the best, and see what this film is actually about. Because it's one I've heard about for years. I don't even know exactly when this came out, you know? But it's one I've heard about for years, one I've kind of wanted to check out, but just never have. Because it's just never been up there on my list of movies to watch. So, let's see what it's about. When the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black and then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So yeah, it wasn't a political satire exactly, although there was some of that in there. It was more of a societal satire, more like making fun of just basically America in general and Americans and our how our culture has evolved to focus less on, intelligent creative thought and more on just the most basic stuff. It goes into things from politics to consumerism, television, basically everything. It deals with just society as a whole and how it's devolved over time. Obviously, as a satire, it takes it to a bit of an extreme degree, showing like 500 years in the future, and basically how everybody is dumb, everybody is completely dependent on consumerism from things like this sports drink company and stuff like Carl's Jr. and all that was mentioned in there. And it even shows how society has become so dumbed down that they don't really understand anything anymore. And even with how they kind of operate in terms of the law, in terms of just how they interact with each other, they don't really know what they're doing at all. It's almost like a complete de-evolution of humanity in a way. And again, obviously, it's an extreme example of the reality of things. But it's like you see things in there, and it's like, oh yeah, you understand what they're going for. The entire thing with the most popular show being just this guy getting hit in the nuts over and over. It's like, yeah, you understand the idea of crass, crude, and overly simplistic humor in that way, and how so many people in real life will put that front and center and act like it's the best thing. Again, with the consumerism, you see how these companies can buy out basically the world. And then you compare it to real life and you see stuff like Disney buying pretty much everything. And it's like, oh yeah, this is, you get it. You see just all kinds of these comparable things, but again, taken to an extreme measure where it's like, it still makes sense. You still understand the commentary that's trying to be made. And it's ridiculous. And I think the best way to that they showcase this, the best example of the degradation is shown right basically at the beginning. The Fuddruckers that is opened up right on top of where the lab used to be, where they ended up getting buried and everything in their cryo chambers. Like, you see, as the years go by, you see as it keeps changing name and devolving into more childish, ridiculous, and crass humor. Eventually, going from Fuddruckers to 500 years in the future, it becomes ButtFuckers. And it's like, yeah, we get the joke in that, where it's like, that's how society has devolved. That's how far they've gone, where it's just like, just saying that word is enough. And you see it through how different places have changed. To where it's like Starbucks is now basically a brothel. And it's like, but they're still using the same terms. Like lattes, but it means something else now. And you see even how the word rehabilitation they still use, but instead it's actually this execution. It kind of in that way shows how even ideas and phrases and concepts are morphed by society to mean something else initially, to kind of evolve slash devolve in its own way. And obviously, there's not really any side this inherently takes. Like, outside of stuff like mentioning that the Nazi regime was evil at the end there during the time machine ride, outside of stuff like that, it doesn't really like make a point in like taking any kind of political or societal side to things. It just shows the general idea of how this country and even the world to a degree is dumbing everything down to appeal to a quicker, a more simple, and an easier set of sensibilities. People just don't want to think as much. People don't want to put as much effort into things. And eventually it gets to a point where that just keeps getting worse and worse, and eventually hurts society in the overall. So it's very clear what this movie was trying to do. But even outside of its commentary, what was the movie in terms of quality for me? Because like this is clearly a comedy and everything, with its over the top satire and all. But I wasn't like laughing a huge amount during the movie. And I think there's a couple reasons for that. And one of them is because this kind of future, although again, very extreme, again, there's a lot to it that seems like it could be just an extreme version of reality. There's a lot of it that you can connect to real life, even in the current day, in 2022. And that's, for me, honestly, kind of upsetting. Kind of scary and sad and unsettling. There's a lot of this stuff that it's like, again, I could see the connection in real life, and it's like, oh, I'm not okay with that. And then there was also the fact that it kept using certain words that I really, one specific one especially, that I really, really don't like. I understand the point. I understand what they were going for. Just like with any movie that uses like derogatory terms and stuff for shock value and to make a point. But at the same time, that word is so absolutely horrific and disgusting to me. It's something I tried. I even said I was trying to not harp on and not focus on so much, but it's like every time it was said, it just kind of sent my emotions into a tailspin and just really like nosedived my any kind of positivity in my emotional state. That kind of stuff is one of the reasons for sure why I wasn't like laughing and enjoying this as much. And the other reason is simply because I didn't really find a lot of it funny. Like the humor that they show in here, the devolved humor that goes with nut shots, poop jokes, dumb stuff like that, it's like that's not funny to me. There were a couple jokes in here that I found maybe a little funny, like the recurring thing about God, the names are escaping me. Let me see if I can bring them up real quick. You guys know I'm terrible with names a lot of the time. Let me see if I can go back to that here. Joe. Because he kept being called like not sure because of the miscommunication and all. Um, the fact that Joe kept accidentally thinking Rita was a painter, an artist, because of the fact that that she kind of said so, and it's like it just kind of devolved into that because she wasn't revealing her real job and everything. It's like that was kind of funny. The way it was executed was kind of funny. That I could get a kick out of. But most of the humor, it just didn't do it for me. It didn't entirely. It wasn't funny. But I think that's also the point. I think people seeing this movie as funny are I think those people are missing the point of this because it's not supposed to be funny. If you're I really don't think it is. I feel like it's supposed to be like this is the bottom of the barrel when it comes to humor. This is the stuff you're not supposed to find funny, and that's why all of these people in this year of what was it 2505 or something like that, that's why all of them view it as funny because it's dumb, it's stupid, it's immature and ridiculous and lacking in any kind of imaginative creativity at all, and that's why it's funny to them. So I feel like people who actually find this film like genuinely funny are missing the point. um but it's also at the same time a satire. It's meant to be comically over the top and utterly ridiculous to an absurd degree. And it is. And I think that's the only saving grace in that in terms of comedy and stuff. It's so unfunny that it kind of rounds itself back to being clever, but not actually funny, just clever. Here's the thing. I didn't find it funny. I wasn't really laughing most of the time. But I enjoyed it because of the cleverness at what it was saying with that. The actors did a great job. The ones who had to pretend to be just that utterly stupid, it's like they sold it in a weird way. And they probably were doing was just being as actively dumb as they could be, as they could think of doing. Um and in that way it works because even though it's like, oh yeah, the acting isn't like grade A acting. It's not supposed to be. Again, the point. But the actors who were smarter, Joe and Rita, like yeah, they performed that kind of character as was needed. And I liked that. I also like how this movie didn't like try to inherently say that Rita's sex work or any sex work was immoral. Like Joe said some certain things about her art and about her relationship with her pimp, but without knowing anything about it and everything, so you can't really count that side of things. And it never really said she was in the wrong for doing that, and I kind of like that. And it never said anyone really was. Because the sex work alone, obviously, this movie came out in the mid 2000s, but in 2022 we now realize like more than ever, at least a lot of us do, not all of us, but a lot of us do, that sex work is work. And that sex workers deserve to be treated not just as regular people, obviously, but the work they do deserves to be treated as just as okay and just as real and natural as anyone's. Whether they be a straight up porn star or an erotic cosplayer, whether they're on OnlyFans or just post photos to Twitter, no matter what they do as a sex worker, they deserve to be completely and totally respected in that regard. And the work they do should be as well. If that is what they truly desire to do, then there's nothing wrong with that. And we need to. For so long, sex work has been stigmatized, and I hate it. But luckily, things are getting better with that. And there was, speaking of the sex aspect of things, yet this also not just went into the consumerism and everything, but also obsession with sexuality. It's made very clear throughout this movie that, like, sex is just something that people do, like, really actively and haphazardly, and they just don't even think about it. Like, even Frito is like, it's implied that he's engaged in it plenty of times, just randomly here and there. And it's not really ever stated to be outright bad, but they do kind of imply that a little bit with the fact that it's the idiots taking part in it so aggressively and naturally. And it's like, casual sex is not, again, just like sex work, it's not a bad thing if people want to engage in it, as long as they do it safely. Now, granted, clearly these people are not. They're dumb as bricks. They're not engaging in safe sex. But still, you get the idea here. It also touched on inflation. Everything costs so damn much in this time period. And it's like, what was it, like 3 billion, 2 or 3 billion or something like that, just to ride the time machine ride, which is literally just a ride through museum, basically. Which, I mean, that kind of ride is fine and fair. That kind of thing in general is like, okay, cool. Even if it was really inaccurate. But that was one of the actual funny parts of this. The inaccuracies, the instead of un, that was surprisingly funny for this. And also, Charlie Chaplin. They thought Charlie Chaplin was the leader of the Nazis because of the mustache, and it's like, oh my god. Just because him and Hitler had the same mustache and everything. Even though that was technically only a character Charlie Chaplin played. I don't think the mustache was ever real. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think that was only for his character, the Tramp. But I might be wrong about that. Also, actually, Charlie Chaplin, didn't he actually play Hitler in a movie? Wasn't it called, like, The Little Dictator or something like that? I don't know. I've never actually seen it. I just know of it. It's something like that, but that might be why as well. That might be where the joke came from as well, so. But either way, that was actually, again, surprisingly funny. Because it's like I got the idea of the joke for multiple reasons now. So it actually makes it a little funnier. But yeah, there's a lot of commentary to talk about. Like, I'm sure people have made videos really dissecting this movie and all the different things it discusses, all the different ideas it puts forth. And there again, it's not a perfect film, but it's so over the top and ridiculous that it's entertaining to a degree. You can enjoy watching it just to see how absolutely dumb as bricks it is. Because that's the point. That's the idea. So it succeeds in that. It does. But yeah, I wouldn't call it like the most entertaining or funny or anything film I've seen. Definitely not. But I got the joke. I got the idea. It definitely clicked in my head. And it was entertaining to watch. It was short too. The time of this movie, I think, was what also helped save it a bit. This movie could have been a lot longer, and if this movie were like 20 minutes longer, it probably wouldn't be as good. The fact that it is only an hour 20 something minutes, the fact that it's so short is actually a saving grace because they don't waste any time. Every second is spent like either making a point or trying to showcase just how far this world has fallen and how much they need the help. It's all, every moment has a purpose to it. Like basically there's no filler. So yeah, I could get behind it. It's nowhere near one of the best movies I've seen on this channel. But I'm sure other people love it a lot more, and if you guys are amongst those, awesome, cool. Let me know your thoughts down below. Tell me what you thought of Idiocracy and your just general thoughts on this kind of thing in general. But yeah. Either way, thank you to Venom0027 for donating for this. We do have some more donation reward movies already in the waiting. But if anyone wishes to request anything that they think would be cool to see me react to, whether it be old or new, any genre, animation, or live action, you can request me to react to it, as long as I have not seen it before. Any donation, no matter how small or how big, gets you a reward. One reward per donation. And if you're unable or just don't want to donate, that's perfectly fine. You don't have to. It's entirely by choice. No one will ever get anything more or less, and no matter what, everyone who watches the channel will be able to see every reaction I post. Nothing will be locked behind a paywall in that regard. This is just a way to help you get some of you guys more engaged in the content of the channel and get you to have a voice on what I react to, especially in regards to movies, but even with shows, because you can request movies, shows, YouTube stuff, anything you want me to react to. But again, even if you can't or don't want to donate, that's perfectly fine. There are other ways to get engaged in the channel, such as with poll shows, which are just recently coming back. We are starting our first poll show, Cuphead, this next week, the Cuphead show. So check that out, and there will be a new poll to replace that once we get to that point where, well, we need to replace it. But yeah, in the meantime, like I said, tell me your thoughts down below on what you think of this movie, and thank you so much for tuning in. For now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.